I'm delighted to chat to Michael Stubbings today. Michael is the Managing Director of Crate Brewery, based in Hackney Wick in London, who also, in partnership with Silo Restaurants, operate the world's first zero-waste restaurant. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, David. How are you?
Yeah, really, really well, thanks. It's January, it's cold, but I think we've got a whole sense of purpose at the moment in this January, this new lockdown to really improve ourselves. And I really am grateful for your time in coming here and just chatting to me about what's going on at Crate the past year and your plans for the future.
Pleasure, David. Thanks for having me. Yeah, very interesting time. Obviously, an incredibly difficult year last year. And I don't think we're out of the woods yet, but I definitely see a light at the end of the tunnel. I think we're coming out of this. A lot of worrying news, of course, around the new strain of coronavirus and the pressure it's putting on the NHS, particularly. I hope it doesn't affect the timeline for the vaccine, and we will be looking at, in the next few months, returning to some kind of normality, which is really the lifeline that businesses are looking for. They've had a tremendously difficult time last year, and I think it's really exposed a lot of weaknesses in businesses, which has been a bit of a shock to the system for a lot of people. I hope most businesses get through this. I think sadly they won't, but I hope that come Easter we'll be looking at some kind of revival of the hospitality industry, which is what I work in, of course, and hopefully we'll be on a journey back to normality.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. So, Michael, tell me about 2020 and how it impacted your business.
A very, very difficult year. At the beginning of the year, things looked normal. we were on our growth trajectory. Obviously, it didn't work out quite like that. Events took place that we all know about now, and it became a very different year to what we were expecting. I think the lessons really that we've learned from that were how important it was to act quickly and decisively, but at the same time be careful not to have any knee-jerk reactions as well. And that's a really difficult balance to strike. You have to act at the right time, but not too soon. We were operating with quite limited data. Things were moving so fast, but we had to make sure that we did the best we could to shore up the business through last year. We went through quite a large restructuring of the business, which meant that we're now a different shape to what we were at the beginning of the year. I think that we've done what we can now to shore up the business for the future, but it's been very difficult. I think it really, at the moment and through last year, it was a time for consolidation, really, to protect the business. We needed to go back to what the core of the business was and make sure we protected that. And that had to be done in pretty quick time. Things are moving so fast. There was a real risk to us and our competitors in the hospitality industry that things could collapse, and that risk hasn't completely gone away. It's a residual risk for all of us. We made some pretty tough decisions, though, and I think we're sanguine that we'll get through this. I think it's very you have to be very careful that you pursue opportunities when they arise. So you need to make sure that you don't ignore opportunities, of course, but you have to make sure that you're very careful pursuing those at the moment and don't overextend yourself. It's really important not to speculate too much at the moment. The business needs to consolidate and look at what it does best and not overextend itself. And I think that will probably be true for a little bit of time yet. We're looking forward, we're looking beyond that to how we scale up again after this, but at the moment it's really about protecting what we have, the core elements of the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Last year, you partnered with Purity Brewing. Tell me how that came about.
So Purity are a very well-regarded brewer in the industry. They produce top quality beers. We've known them for a while, and last year was an opportunity for us to take our supply over to them with the aim to produce our own beers, our own recipes, our own hop-forward beers using their fantastic setup up in the West Midlands. Crate was previously a vertically integrated business. It had its own brewery and its own hospitality. So that business model is probably familiar to a lot of people. You take part in both the supply side of the business and the demand side of the business. So in brewing, that would be you have your own brewery and you have your own tap rooms. So previously, the businesses may have been a collection of tap rooms that would have been partnering with a different brewery, or a brewery that was selling to different tap rooms. Vertical integration is obviously combining those things and owning all those aspects of the supply chain. It's a similar model used in a lot of different industries. My background in coffee, similarly, a business may be a multi-site cafe business that ultimately decides to incorporate its own roastery. There are advantages and disadvantages with that business model. Advantages, of course, being around the better margins. If you're incorporating both the supply and the demand, then you're essentially clipping the ticket twice, which is something that's obviously great in terms of profit margins. Control of supply as well, of course. The dependability of your supply in that situation and the control of those costs is also quite advantageous. Disadvantages, though, of course, are you're increasing your fixed cost base by doing that, and by doing that, if the business is put under a lot of pressure, something like that could be a weakness. And what happened last year for a lot of businesses was unprecedented, and an overused word, I think, for last year, but very true. And it did expose a lot of weaknesses in a lot of businesses. We fortunately were able to get ahead of that, and we've partnered up with Purity to provide our beer now.
Fantastic. How have you adapted during this pandemic to actually survive?
Well, we had to act quite quickly, and again, it was very difficult to make sure that we acted quickly and decisively, but not too quickly. It was very important to look at consumer behaviour and how that was changing during the pandemic, and also how that might change beyond the pandemic too. And something that we thought was very important was that we didn't quickly change the business to cope with what was going on last year, but strip ourselves back to such an extent that once this is all over, and I'm sure that we're on the road to that, make sure that the business wasn't in a position where it was unscalable again. So we were looking beyond what was going on last year to what were the changes in consumer behavior because of what was happening last year, and what changes might actually persist beyond what was happening last year. So we focused a lot on changing to an online model. So we've got an e-commerce platform now, which is doing really well. We're confident that will continue to do well into the future. Some of the changes that we made on site as well in our hospitality venue, we're pretty sure that they will be changes that will lock in for the future as well. So it was important for us not to just look at quick fixes. We wanted to make sure that whatever changes we made were changes that would stretch beyond what's going on now.
And what are the biggest lessons you learnt last year, which you could pass on to the viewers?
Well, it's it is unprecedented what happened last year. That word has been overused, but it's true. So it's very difficult to plan for. I think a lot of businesses will quite rightly look back and say, well, none of us could have seen that coming. And I think that's true. I think, though, that it's only true to a certain extent. I think it did expose some weaknesses in businesses that that perhaps shouldn't have been there. I think it's really important to, if you are starting a business, or if you have a new business, or actually even if you have an established business, to make sure that you're always conducting reviews of your processes and your procedures. Make sure that you've got the basics right, make sure the business is robust. A crisis like what happened last year will expose weaknesses in a business. And I think it's really important to make sure that those weaknesses don't exist. All businesses, in terms of risk, there's always some risk that you're going to have to carry. You're not going to be able to eliminate all risk, but it's important to make sure that any risk that can be mitigated is mitigated ahead of something like that happens. And my background is finance, so that's something I'm quite focused on. So making sure that the business is financially robust is really important, because when unexpected things happen, those weaknesses can be exposed. I think something else that's really important is to make sure that as well as examining the processes and the strengths and weaknesses in a business, is to make sure that the people you have around you are strong as well. I think last year really, for us at Crate, proved what a fantastic team we have, and thank goodness for that, because we couldn't have got through it without the people we had. I've seen situations where that hasn't been the case, and that hasn't gone so well. Fortunately for us, it did. But I think it's really important to make sure you've got the right people in the right jobs as well.
And on that basis, when you're recruiting people, are there any sort of core elements you look for in people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think depending on what stage of growth the business is in is very important. I think that in a business, if it's largely people that are startups or in new businesses that might be looking for advice at the moment, it's really important to have people that are resilient. That is crucial. Unfortunately for us at Crate, we did have a hugely resilient team, very tough and very hardworking. Have people that are easy, that are adaptable, like to work in the grey areas. It really last year was and unusually so last year, I think, because of the opportunity to put people on furlough. A lot of businesses slimmed their teams down to such a degree that everyone was doing a bit of everything. Everyone had their sleeves rolled up, which is normal in a startup, but of course it was really heightened last year. So having a resilient and adaptable team is crucial.
I completely agree. I used to work in a Michelin-starred restaurant many years ago, one of the top 50 restaurants in the country at the time, and the owner would literally be on their hands and knees scrubbing the floor at the end of the evening, even
Wow.
cleaners, just to ensure it was just absolutely impeccable. No job is too small for anyone, and we all mucked in, in the afternoons.
Yeah.
I was looking after wine, I was a sommelier, but I'd go and pick beans. The job's got to be done. We just have to muck in as a team. We operate as a team, not as individuals. And I think that is so important and a great sort of work-life lesson, really.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's important for everyone in the business to be doing anyway. I think it was actually necessary for everyone to do last year. And I think a lot of people learned the benefits from that, from having to do it when previously they hadn't done it before. Yeah, totally agree. And in most of the businesses I've worked for have been startups or coming out of their startup phase, and it's important to be able to understand everything that's happening in every part of the business.
What are your plans for Crate going into, well, we say 2021, let's say beyond that as well, because you don't know quite what's going to happen. I know in the beer market, the low alcohol, zero alcohol beers are gaining more and more traction in the market. Do you have any plans to make those, or what's your viewpoint?
Yeah, that low and no alcohol beer is a hugely growing segment. It's huge on the continent. The percentages of low and no that are consumed on the continent are way higher in the UK than in the UK. But it is growing in the UK, and it's something that we're very focused on. I particularly personally drink a lot of low and no alcohol beers. I think that industry is better than it's ever been. There are some really strong beers out there that I often joke that if you could do a blind tasting with someone and they wouldn't be entirely sure whether it were low or no or not, then that's a pretty successful beer. And I've drunk some before where I think a lot of people wouldn't know the difference, and that is a real mark of success, I think. So yes, Crate, absolutely. In the future, that's something we'll be interested in looking into. What we're going to do for the time being is consolidate, stick to our core strengths. We've got a great brand, we've got a great customer base, so much support. There's really a lot for us to work with there. So this year, particularly the beginning of this year, is the time to consolidate and focus on the core elements of the business. Coming out of the other side of this, we will grow again. We'll focus on retail and hospitality for now, partnering with Purity, and then in future we'll grow bigger again. And I'm looking forward to that. Ultimately, I expect we'll be a multi-site business with a reintegrated brewery.
I should look forward to it. It'd be fantastic. So just finishing up here, Michael, if you could give 3 pieces of advice to someone starting up a business or who's just started a business, what would they be?
Sure. Yeah, I think I'd say number one at the moment, particularly because of where we are, but in normal times anyway, but particularly because of the situation at the moment, I would advise anyone starting a new business or anyone that's just started a business to make sure that business is resilient, make sure that the basics are right. It's really important that as the business grows, it's not collecting weaknesses that might be exposed. That's really important, because I think if there's anything that last year's taught us, it's that unexpected things do happen, and when they do, if the business has chinks in its armor, then that's going to really that's going to be a real problem. But at the same time, I would say that that's not me. I'm originally an accountant, so I guess I'm probably more risk averse than most. But I think you need to be careful, though, that you're creating a business model that is scalable. On the other side of this, the business does need to be ready to grow quickly and exploit opportunities when they come around. And I guess as a second piece of advice, I think to do that, it's really important to make sure you have the right people around you. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm an intrapreneur, I guess I think is one of the phrases. I've worked closely with entrepreneurs, and I think it's really important that a business has people there that can offset that entrepreneurial spirit. It's really important that there are people there that are able to turn those good ideas into put them into practice, and people that are concerned with some of the less glamorous things like risk mitigation and cash. We haven't talked about cash much, but that would be one of the most important things I would advise anyone in a startup business or in a growing business. Be super focused on cash. It is so important that things don't come to a grinding halt when it comes to cash, and that's not something that typically an entrepreneur would spend much time on and shouldn't spend much time on. It's not where their focus should be, but that someone needs to be focused on that. So having the right people there is really important. So that would be the second thing, I think, having a good team. And thirdly, I think, exploiting opportunities is always important, and is still important. But I think more so than ever, the focus needs to be on payback, and looking at these opportunities and saying, let's pursue them, but let's not speculate too much. They have to be. We have to make sure that they are. They're going to pay back. You need to be careful at the moment not to overextend yourself in business, and not to take a scattergun approach to exploiting opportunities. It's a time, really, I would say, at the moment for existing businesses to consolidate, look at what they do best, and prepare for the next stage of growth.
That's absolutely fascinating, Michael. Thank you so much for taking the time. For all the viewers, your website is, we'll put the link down below, but it's cratebrewery.com. Like Michael said, they've got an online shop, got some amazing beers. So go and visit them, see what they're about. When the restaurants are open again, go and visit Silo and experience the wonderful beers that they make. Michael, thank you very much indeed.
Not at all. Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.